And we're up to 31. Yay. 33. If one or more of you could go into chat, please, and just verify that you can see a single PowerPoint slide that says Trailhead Virtual Bootcamp for Platform Developer 1, Week 1 Q&A, that would be very helpful. I'm just getting used to this WebEx thing. I'm used to using other tools, but you want to make sure you're seeing what you're supposed to see. So if you take a quick peek, that'd be great. All right. Okay. Thanks. I think I need to know what I think I need to know. I think I know what I need to do differently. So let me get it going here. How about now? Can you see a slide? Cool. All righty. Figured it out. Yay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and start the recording here, and then we'll get started in just a minute or so. So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the August 12th, week 1 office hours for Wednesday. It's 1 o'clock in California, 3 o'clock here in Chicago, 4 o'clock on the East Coast, and I think there's people in various other places as well. So really the goal today is to kind of open it up to you guys just to ask questions as you have them in the chat. And if you guys don't have any questions, we can just kind of do a quick walkthrough of what the expected content was for today. And then, excuse me, and then, that'll probably occupy our half hour. But if you have any questions, throw it in chat. Okay. So I have a question from Raul. It's a great question. It says, I want to know how to build a many-to-many relationship using data modeling. So they might not have called it a many-to-many relationship, but in the there was a reference to creating detail relationships. So the idea is if I have object A and object B, and there's a many-to-many relationship between them, create as a database table, if you will. In Oracle, they call it the intersection table, if that means anything to you. Of course, it's called the so this junction object will have two relationships to it. From it, rather, it will have one relationship each of the masters. Excuse me, and that's what makes it a many-to-many relationship. I'm going to put a bunch of folks on mute here. I think we're getting some echo. Hold on here. That should make it better. Yeah, so again, what makes it a many-to-many relationship is when you have two master detail relationships, the detail object sort of sitting in the middle is what really references the two different parents. Does that help? Well, okay, so this is a fine question. I understand that. The question is, I don't understand why with master detail relationships, what I think is a simple concept is blanketed in tons of jargon. To that, I sort of just have to say it is what it is, because every platform uses different terminology. And the terminology that the Salesforce platform happens to use is master detail and junction object. So sometimes it's just a matter of mapping other terminology from other databases that you're used to into the Salesforce world. But as you get into the developer world, there's going to be more and more and more jargon. So the question underneath, there's another question that came in. I need to scroll here a little bit. It says, can we use lookup relationships from many to many? Technically, you can, but Salesforce doesn't call it a junction object then. A junction object, as defined by Salesforce, is that object in the middle that has two master detail relationships. You can do something similar, put an object in the middle that points using lookups to two other objects, but it's not technically, in that case, it's not technically a junction object at that point. That's just their terminology on that. If I'm trying to keep you guys muted as fast as I can here, but it would be really helpful if you could mute yourself, because then it makes it easier for everybody to kind of hear what's going on here. Let's see. How do we set up Lightning Wave to deploy to multiple orgs at the same time? I have to admit, I don't understand that question, because we're not doing anything about deployment right now. So, there is a topic later in the module about how to deploy from a sandbox into a production org or something. So I think I'm going to put that one on hold for now, because it isn't really germane to the content of today, just to be honest. So I'm going to put that one on hold for now. People are getting muted. There we go, a lot of background noise, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's the question so far. People don't always like to, and Raul sort of said it perfectly here, to getting even a little more technical. The reason it has to be master detail is that you want the junction record to be deleted if you delete either one of the masters, and that's what we and that's sort of the characteristic that you want of a junction record. If either the parents go away, the junction record has to go away as well. The next question, again, I'm not sure I understand. Could you please go over WebAssessor and how we link our Trailhead account to that? Because you don't really, to my understanding, you don't really link your Trailhead to WebAssessor. WebAssessor is the tool that you use to take the test or to sign up for the test, but that isn't really tied to your Trailhead account, I don't believe. So I'm not sure about that. I will write that one down. And I will get back to an answer about that. Tie Trailhead to WebAssessor. Okay. I will get back to you on that one, or post something out in Chase or something like that. I can't keep up with your chats here. Let me go back up a little bit here. Scroll. There it is. All right. So another question was, what's the difference between sort of the out of the box sales apps and Sales Cloud and Service Cloud? They're really one and the same. So the Sales Cloud has some sort of default functionality, account management, opportunity management, contact management, et cetera. And then there are additional things that you can add on to that sometimes cost, honestly, extra money. But that's all a part of the Sales Cloud. And then if you go in the app launcher and click Service, that really is going into the Service Cloud. And again, there's some default functionality available for that out of the box. But then depending on, exactly what a particular client's needs are, there are various add-ons that you might want to throw in that. There's the concept of, for example, entitlements that you actually have to pay extra for. That's sort of how you track service level agreements, et cetera, et cetera. There is a concept that's called the Service Council. You have to have some special licenses for that. That's particularly for the folks that are on the actual help desk itself. It's sort of a one-stop shopping where they can see all the information about their customers, their users, what their current problems are, what their past problems are, et cetera, et cetera. Yep. Yeah. So again, you get some out of the box sales and service cloud functionality for just your standard license fees, and then depending on what exactly a client needs, you can pay for more and turn on additional functionality. Another question here is, where can I watch the previous meetings and this one later? If you go into your virtual boot camp org, and in your agenda of all the things that are supposed to do as the meetings get posted, which usually takes about 24 hours, you should see links there to those meetings. Another question that came up is Financial Cloud. Well, that is a complete add-on. And so that's something you do actually have to pay extra for. It is what's called a managed package. So you install it into your org. But as the name sort of says, it is designed for the financial service industry, insurance, banking products, etc. But that is not out of the box. That is completely something you have to pay extra for. And I'm sorry, I do not agree with what Andrew said here about how the Service Council is a rapid-fire, scaled-down version of the Service Act. That honestly, that's just simply not true. Sorry to say that. The Service Council is a user interface. Let's we got a dog barking here. Whose dog is ever barking? Can you mute yourself, please? Otherwise, I will go mute. Again, what I was saying is the Service Council is an application that simply is a fancy user interface that sits on front of the Service Cloud. I agree that it's used at call centers, but is it scaled down? No. If anything, it's scaled up because you've got one-stop shopping in this one user interface for knowledge and cases, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't agree with the scaled down part of that for sure.
Hi, Greg. Sorry to interrupt, and thank you so much for the clarification. This is Andrew, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, I just meant by scale down. I just meant that it is it's a place that is like hyper. It's like configured to be like hyper efficient. So you won't have quite as many features like just glaring at you when you first like log into the interface.
I completely agree with that. It's customizable by each individual customer service rep, how they want it laid out. It's often one of those where you're going to split it across multiple screens depending on how much information a person needs to see. Completely agree with that. Completely agree with that. Yep. All right. Let me get back to chatter here. What else? Anybody? Any other questions?
I actually had one really quick about the application lifecycle management process. I know that this is working a little bit ahead. I'm just about to get surgery, so I'm trying to just get a really clear picture of certain things before I go in, because I think for the next couple of weeks I might be a little out of commission. So apologies on that. Just trying to be smart about it. I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about, because I know there are three within the application lifecycle sort of management process. There are three models. Like there's the change set, and then there's org development, and then there's like a third one. I forget what they are. I was just wondering if you could maybe speak a little bit, like on a high level, about the differences.
Well, I think maybe you've got a couple concepts kind of misconstrued here, because application lifecycle management is more than just how do I migrate things from one org to an next? That's sort of what you were describing there.
I was looking at the trailhead.
Let me finish what I'm saying now.
Yeah,
let me finish what I was saying now. Yes, there are three different ways you can migrate your metadata from one org to another. There's change sets under certain circumstances. There's what's called the Force.com migration tool. It's also called Ant sometimes, and it can be done within Visual Studio. There's at least those three ways, and there's a number of other tools as well. But that's sort of at the end of application lifecycle management. That's like go live phase. Yeah. Okay. So the one question here is create a workflow task. Shouldn't it be replaced by Process Builder? No. Workflows will not be retired soon. They are not going away because they are still very, very highly efficient and effective for sort of that small, a quick task upon the save of a record. So no, you do need to know workflows. You absolutely do need to know workflows for the test. And as a developer, right? Process Builder doesn't replace everything. They're trying, but yeah. What else, my friends? Otherwise, I'm going to switch gears a little bit and just sort of talk a little bit through what we were talking about this week. Oh, okay. Question: can you talk about workflow and outbound messaging? Yeah, I mean, this is a little advanced for this point in time in the course, but the idea is the outbound message that can be done from a workflow is the only non-programmatic technique where I can do an integration. And it's an outbound integration that's at what's called the SOAP level. So basically, in the SOAP world, you have to give what's called an endpoint, which is just a URL, and then you have to shove a bunch of data together, which becomes an XML packet behind the scenes. Then, so upon the save of this record, ship this message off to another system. A simple use case for that might be upon the save of an opportunity that has been marked as closed and won, bundle up the necessary information about that opportunity and ship it over to the billing system so they can then start kicking off things. Good grief, kicking off things like collections and stuff like that. Yeah, but that's the outbound is the only way that I can do that. Is that the same as external services? No, not at all. External services is a programmatic web service mechanism. Right. Right. Well, Michelle, you said there until they receive full parity. I'm not quite sure where you're getting that information because everything I hear from Salesforce is that workflows will never be going away. Because the before save flows and the after save flows are not intended to replace workflows. They're actually intended to help perhaps replace before and after triggers. So they'd be replacing some code with some declarative stuff instead. So again, I'm not sure where you got that information, but I don't believe that's correct. Yeah, everything I've heard from Salesforce's workflows are not going away anytime soon. Big objects, I actually haven't used big options very much, so I'm not sure that I have much to say about that. Let me take that as a note, and I can hit it on Friday if nothing else. What's the use case for those? From Andrew, I've very recently discovered the term model view controller architecture, something called client server architecture. What's the difference between the two? Okay. So the MVC model is an architectural paradigm for a web-based application. That's fancy schmancy terms. Where the model is the database, the controller is where all the business logic lives, and then the view is the user interface. So that's the heart of it. As opposed to client server architecture, that's where you've got two different applications, one running on the client, which is your laptop or your phone or your computer on your tablet or something. The other is running on the server. So Salesforce in its old form was technically a client server application with what they call a very, 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 very thin client. Basically, everything took place on the server. As they started going into Lightning Web Components, then we're actually pulling much more of the functionality much more of the functionality into the client, because a Lightning Web Component isn't just the user interface, it's business logic as well. So I don't know that Salesforce would necessarily say that, but I do think of Lightning Web Components as being the client in a client server application. And then it's Apex code and stuff like that behind the scenes running on the server, which is the server part of the application. Yeah.
Wow, thank you. Cool.
Sure. I don't think I understand this question. Can we do composite keys to connect master details? Are you saying, can you create composite keys that would be your foreign key? Yeah, otherwise I'm not sure I know what that means. Somebody it's Chowdhury, I think. Yeah, because Salesforce doesn't really support the concept of master keys or composite keys. So what you end up having is you have two foreign keys, one foreign key that points to one master and another foreign key that points to the second master. There is no composite key, if you will. Yeah. Can you achieve it by formula fields? What do you mean by it, Session? When you say, can you achieve it by formula fields? What do you mean by it? Well, no, there is no composite key formula. So yeah, you could create a formula field that concatenates two keys together, but it's just the concatenation of those new keys. It's not going to allow you to navigate to another record. Salesforce doesn't support that concept. You have just a simple, the foreign key in one record is the primary key on another record. All right. Somebody said, where can I get more information about formulas? I would be the first one to agree that the stuff on formulas and validation rules you hit this week just barely touched the surface. It goes into much deeper detail. I think it's in the intermediate developer trail or trail mix, it might be. So just do a little searching in Trailhead. You should be able to find out. And there's a bunch of Google stuff out there, and there's a bunch of stuff out there. You can find a lot of other things. So yeah. So somebody mentioned, can we using compound keys in a where clause? Well, you could use the concatenation of two foreign keys in a where clause, but that doesn't make it a composite key. So I understand what you're trying to say, but I do think it's important to think about that there really is not a concept of a composite key in Salesforce. There simply isn't. Can you provide a brief overview of when to use external relationships, et cetera, et cetera? Yeah, I don't think they get into that yet in this module here. But what you might want to think about is it's sometimes that your client might have some requirements. It could be regulatory requirements or industry requirements that says their data cannot be stored in the Salesforce cloud. It has to be stored in their on-premise database, whether that be Oracle or the platform, doesn't really matter. It's in that situation that an external object or an external relationship comes into play, because what it lets you do is to create what sort of looks like a custom object in Salesforce, but what it actually is a bunch of pointers out to the records that sit in the on-premise database. And you're allowed to then manipulate those records like you're in Salesforce, but you're actually manipulating them out in the on-premise database. Again, banking is a very common, or financial services in general is a very common use case for that, because they have lots of regulatory requirements that you can't put their data in the cloud. Yeah. A number of people have said you just got to play with formulas. Yes. So think about mean, if you're struggling with formulas and you're already kind of experienced in Excel spreadsheets, the concept is really the same. You know, a formula in Excel pulls data in from a couple different cells in the row to come up with a calculated value. Here, a formula in Salesforce grabs some data from a couple of other fields on that, on that record and calculates another field. The difference is you can also pull data in from the parent, the grandparent. You can go up, I think it's 10 levels, something like that. Not that you'll ever know, not that you'll ever go up that high. But those are what are called cross-object formulas, where you're not only pulling data in from the direct record itself, but from its parent. And I don't think they go terribly deep into that in your stuff this week. But there are some additional trailheads that go much deeper than that. Again, I don't understand this question that says, can I start an ID key from a start and end defined by user? Can you help me understand what that means? Somebody? I don't understand what that means. Yeah, Michelle just pointed out a link in chat. It's excellent. Yeah, there's a link to what's called the formula cheat sheet. That'll help. That formula cheat sheet also has information on the operators and the functions. And Camille, I'm not sure I understand what you're saying here about formulas when coding, because we're not coding when we create formulas. Formulas, as we're talking about them here, are point and click, so there's no code. So there isn't anything you need to do to recalculate them. In fact, I don't know that they tell you this per se in the material this week, but the formula doesn't actually cause any data in the database to be saved. The way Salesforce handles formulas is that it automatically calculates the formula, does the calculation as necessary. Okay, so now I understand your question. So if you're doing a query and one of the fields you're querying in SOCL is in fact a formula field, it will be calculated at the point of time in the query. So yeah, so there's no worry about those being calculated, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Hey, Greg, can you hear
me? Barely.
So I can hear you though. Greg, is what I was saying is, let's say if you have an address table, and I want to start an address object, and I want to start the position of the ID key at 500.
Right. And you don't get to do that. Salesforce assigns the IDs. You do not get to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Yep. One of the questions here within, and I'm missing some. I'm sorry, they're going by real fast here. Is there a replacement from multi-nested if then else conditions? Yes, there is a case statement. So you could look at that. Yeah, right. The case in the formula statement. Yeah, going back to that auto kind of numbers, you can't create the IDs. Salesforce creates those, but you could create an auto number field that sort of would act as like it's not really an index, but as a secondary way to get access to those fields, etc. Yeah. What did I miss here? Yeah, the advanced formula module is great. It's pretty hard. But you'll get yourself a couple badges of that about that. Just looking at other questions here. Well, yeah, so Waleed, the syntax in Apex is switch. The term you use in formulas, or for that matter, you can use them in validation rules, is it's a case statement. I don't know why they couldn't have used the same thing, but yeah, both of those are alternatives to nested if-else structures. Switch is for Apex code. The case is for in a formula. Yeah. Other sources, well, there are lots of other things out there. I don't know that I can recommend too much about that. But there's a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah, the Pluralsight stuff is pretty good. There's a couple links there.
In closed opportunities. And
say that again, please.
That is, if the status was cancelled.
Right.
Right. So how many of them do you have?
Okay, hold on, guys. We're getting a couple other people talking here. I'm going to mute you all. Sorry. There we go. Yeah, if you want to have some individual conversations, I'm afraid you'll need to do that afterwards, because otherwise we all hear it here. Mark just posted a reference to Pluralsight. That is quite good as well. Talking a little bit about relational databases and stuff. Which launches first? I'm gonna avoid that question now, because you have an entire module on it coming up later. But the answer is you've got before triggers and after triggers, and processes come after all of that. I can't disagree that there's multiple syntaxes coming here. I don't know that I'd necessarily call them languages, but yeah, the syntax for formulas is different than the syntax for Apex. Can't disagree. Just kind of have to learn that, but yeah. Yeah. That again, there will be a module. You'll have an entire 2 or 3 sections here on order of execution and how that relates to things like governor limits and stuff like that. But that'll come up in a couple of weeks. I think it's in week 4, actually, if I remember correctly. All right, we got time for a couple more here.
Greg, it's Andrew again. Going back a little bit to earlier in the talk, when we were talking about external objects, I'm just brand new to all this, trying to get some clarification on that. And I was looking at something called Salesforce Connect, and I was wondering, like,
that's what it
does and when that comes into the picture.
Well, Salesforce Connect is the fancy schmancy term for the whole grouping of things that surround external objects. So it's sort of like the product name, whereas what you actually have to create are external objects.
Oh, okay. Does Salesforce do Salesforce external objects? Are there different kinds of Salesforce external objects? Or
yeah, there's
used without Connect, or
that you can use without. Well, you could always access external quote data through integrations, but if you actually want to access those objects, even though they're sitting externally, but they appear in the Salesforce user interface, then you have to use the external object concept, because then you get a tab. To the end user, it won't look any different than any other tab. They might not even know that the actual data is sitting, off platform someplace or other. Yeah.
If the data is coming into Salesforce via external object, what you're seeing there?
Oops, I lost you.
Dynamic, or is it just a snapshot of the information in the object?
I'm sorry, you blanked out there for just a minute, Andrew. One more time, if you would.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, is it like a snapshot, or are you getting more like a flowing dynamic representation of what's going on in the object, like in real time?
I believe the documentation refers to it as almost real time. So that if you would like refresh the tab and the data in the database has changed, you should see the new copy of that. It's not exactly real time, but it's almost real time.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I think the last question we'll have for the day is, can objects, if you will, defined in Heroku, can they be defined as external objects in Salesforce? Yes. In fact, that's one of the environments that is frequently used as an external object. Yeah. All right, let me see here. Our time's up, guys. Remember that you can go into your virtual bootcamp org and log cases if they're, excuse me, if you need questions answered before Friday. Friday will mainly be presentation on my part, sort of we have 90 minutes allocated. I'm going to try to finish it in about an hour and 15, so we'll have a little time at the end for questions there as well. But the intent Friday is for me to sort of do a 20,000 foot, sorry to put it that way, lecture over the content of the week, just to make sure that everybody's sort of on the same even keel with the content. So I'm gonna close it off. Thanks for your great questions, guys. Again, don't hesitate to chat. I'm sorry, don't hesitate to talk back and forth to each other. I'll leave the meeting open for a few minutes if you guys want to sort of connect, etc. I'll plan on shutting it down in like 5 minutes or so. Other than that, we will see you on Friday. Have a good couple days, guys. See you then.